Hi everyone, I hope that you're well. I just want to make sure that the audio is okay and that also you can see what's on my screen before I get started. So I'm just going to wait for a couple of seconds to make sure that you can all hear me clearly enough and also that you can see my screen. If you can't, could you just write a comment? And you should have a comments area or a questions area on your toolbar. I'll just wait a couple of seconds, see if I get anything through, and if I don't, I'll assume that all is well and continue. Okay, so I've not had anything through, so I'll assume that you can all hear me okay and that you can see my screen okay. I'd just like to start by introducing exactly who we are and what this webinar is going to consist of. So we are the Agency Works. We work alongside many agencies all over the UK. All types of different agencies as well, so from digital to marketing to design to PR and full service agencies as well. And we work with a project management system called Synergist, which we implement into these agencies. But not only do we implement the system, we also work alongside agencies helping with their business processes as well. So obviously, over servicing being quite a big challenge that comes up a lot. A number of agencies will come to us because they're having, issues with things like over servicing. So whether they need the system or whether potentially they're already using the system, will then help them reduce things like over servicing. So today, and welcome everybody that you may not have seen Synergist before or you may not have heard of us. So welcome to all of those, and also hello to some of our clients that I know have joined today as well. So just to go over what we're going to be discussing today, unfortunately, we've only got 20 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep it quite nice and basic, just for webinar purposes. If there are any more details that anybody wants after the webinar, that's absolutely fine. I'm more than happy to have any one-to-ones, or even if it's just a phone call. So we're going to be looking at why our agencies are over-servicing, and then we're also going to be assessing how can over-servicing be reduced. Okay, so I just want to start by showing you, this is actually one of the statistics from last year, okay, as a comparison. We'll be releasing the 2018 ones very soon, so it will be the comparison between 2017 and 2018. As soon as that's released, I'll try and get that over to you all. It's actually, the results are pretty amazing. Not surprisingly, actually, they're very similar to this. So we ask each year, what are the biggest financial challenges you face in running your business? Okay, and this is sent to over 100 agencies that we work with, and these are the results that we receive. So as you can see, over servicing seems to be, one of the biggest challenges that agencies face. Now, something that comes very closely alongside of that is increase in profitability. Now, if you're over servicing, then it is going to be a bit of a challenge to potentially even maintain or increase profitability. So reducing over servicing can have humongous benefits, not only on increasing profitability, but also on organizational aspects of your business. So what we want to know is, okay, so we know that over-servicing is an issue, but why are agencies over-servicing? So from all of the research that we've carried out, and also from working with agencies for altogether nearly 20 years, or actually over 20 years combined as a company, we've come up with 6 main reasons that agencies are over servicing. Now, I would love to go into each of these in loads of detail, but unfortunately today it is just going to have to be a brief overview on each of these. The 6 main reasons are that initial stages, the agency is not selling enough hours. That means that the resource will just work on, so the designers, the developers, your studio team will just continue to work on the things that they have in front of them. Also, inaccurate estimating can be a huge factor for over-servicing. If you're not keeping track of what you estimated versus what's actually happened, those estimates won't be updated on a regular basis, and you won't have any visibility on whether or not they are actually accurate, whether or not that is, a good or accurate estimation of what that client's brief is. We've also got spending too much time on a job, which kind of goes hand in hand with not selling enough hours. But things like scheduling can help reduce this, which we'll be looking at a bit later on. So if somebody has been estimated a number of hours and they're not given those number of hours and they're just given the piece of work, potentially, if they're enjoying the work, which a lot of the studio team obviously do enjoy doing what they do, they're creative minds. So, they will just spend the time until somebody says stop, which potentially is too late. We've also got in there human error. Now, this can't always be helped, and it's something that is never going to be completely it can be reduced potentially, but it's nothing that is going to be, completely gone anytime soon. We are only humans. So things that you can do with that though is you can actually start tracking things like utilization, and you can also start tracking the job. So if you are looking at your estimated versus your actual, you can see that if a resource is a lot of errors happening in one particular phase of a job, each time they do that job, well, perhaps they maybe need a bit of support on that, or it may literally just be a one-off human error, in which case at least then that the job's over-serviced for that reason. Okay, we've also got using a different resource. So if we've estimated for potentially a cheaper resource, and actually a more expensive resource has carried out that work, it can make a difference on the cost of that job to you. So, and again, it kind of goes back to the estimate, ensuring that we're trying to get that estimate as accurate as possible. And then we've also, finally, which is another huge one, is the client moving the goalposts. I'm sure everyone listening is very familiar of, if not at least one of those, if not sometimes, all of those on different occasions. So the client giving you an idea up front, you build your estimate, and then actually, they come back with a million rounds of amends, or they change the brief slightly, which completely skewers all of your figures that you've done. So again, we'll have a look at some ways in which we can gain visibility on that. And if we've got the visibility, it means that potentially we could go back with the evidence, or, start adding things like rounds of amends in the estimates, which I know, especially some of our clients, I know you guys already do that anyway. Okay, so these are the reasons that we've been studying, and these are the ones that I'm going to focus on today, some in more detail than others. So the next thing is, okay, so we know why. How then can we reduce the over-servicing? So I'm going to start by looking at the initial stages. So here I'm saying, so to get it right at the initial stages, and that's things such as your estimating, selling enough hours, and also scheduling those estimated hours onto the resource. I'm going to cover these three areas to begin with, and these will have a huge difference, even if it is just these three steps that you take. So this is actually a quote. I went to a meeting, this is before Christmas now actually, it was a lot of agency managers in London, agency directors in London, and they were saying that a bad brief will have significant hidden cost implications. And I just thought that quote was brilliant, because it is so true. What we need to do is we need to be really accurate, and we need to say, okay, what does the client want? And realistically, if the client wants that, not taking their budget into consideration, what should we be selling that for? Okay, or not necessarily selling it for, but what should we be estimating for that job? Okay, so I'm going to come on to that in a bit more detail, and that's kind of looking at the estimate. Just before I do, I want to go through the selling enough hours as well, and just how this can be managed. So this is just a typical example of how it is managed in some of the agencies that we work with. So what we're doing is we're looking at all of the different resource, and we're saying, okay, well, how many chargeable hours? Because when I say the hours that we can sell, what I mean is the chargeable hours that we can sell. Now, if it's a designer, you might expect them to be sort of, potentially something like 75% utilised, or perhaps 70%. If it's somebody like, an account director who's going to be doing a lot of meetings, phone calls, internal admin, they're going to be less utilised. So you might be looking at something like 30%. So ensuring that you've got a good, accurate reflection on these are our resource, this is how many chargeable hours we can get out of each of them, will then give you the visibility on this is the number of hours we need to sell. Now, by tracking the number of hours that we have available to sell based on our resources utilization rates and the hours that they work, etc., we can then track that we are selling them. If we're not selling them, we can use CRM aspects such as, pipeline tracking. It may be that if you are using things like pipeline tracking, in fact, I've got an example in our software here. So whether you're using Excel, Synergist, I know some of you are, or whether you're using, a CRM tool, tracking these available hours against the hours sold, and your pipeline, which is here, will enable, I'm just going to do that as a funnel, will enable you to say things like, okay, well, actually, we've got a number of opportunities, as we describe them as, that have given us verbal commitment. Let's try and get those pushed through. Okay, so we are selling those hours. That will reduce things like the resource spending too much time on the jobs. Okay, so the next area is the estimating. So something that is really, really key, and again, I'm sure a number of you are already doing it this way. If not, we can, have further discussions around this afterwards in a bit more detail if you'd like. So having a separate estimate to the quote. So a lot of companies, they'll have an estimate, which is also technically their quote. Now, having them separate means that your estimate can be your internal budget based on the client's brief. So the client has said, this is what we want. You're saying, okay, if you want this, this is who we need, this is how long we need them for, this is what it's going to cost us, and this is what we should be charging based on that brief. And then the quote is your commercial. Okay, what are we now going to sell this job for? It may be that we need to manipulate that because of new business purposes, or it may be that we need to manipulate it because the client has come to us with a set budget that actually, they're a good loyal client that we want to sort of keep on in our good books, in which case we're happy to offer that. If we are, we should never change the estimate unless the brief has changed. What we see quite often is that a client will come to an agency and they'll say, this is what we want. So we'll say, okay, build an estimate. And then they'll say, oh, we want, rather than buying, say, 50 hours of design, can we reduce that can we just pay for 40? Can we have some discount? And, it may be that you're happy to do so, but what we shouldn't be doing is reducing the hours to 40 in the estimate. We should be reducing the hours in the quote rather than the estimate, because that brings me on to my next area. From that estimate, which is a real true reflection on what we actually need to do this job, it will fall through to things like your capacity plans. It will also fall through to things like scheduling tools. So again, whatever it is that you're using, this is an example of ours in the system. So this is just a typical example of a scheduling tool. And what my main aim of this point is that you're scheduling the realistic hours to the resource. So here, for example, we've got the client, we've got the job, we've got who we need, and the estimated number of hours. We might be selling that for, we might have 10 hours in that box, but actually we might be selling it for 5 but that doesn't matter at this stage. Your studio team need 10 hours to do it, in which case we estimate 10 hours. So what we then do is we just drag and drop that onto the resource. This will help them reduce things like human error, spending too much time on the job, and also using a different resource. It may still happen from time to time, if someone's off sick, but if people are being given their own, work to do with an accurate number of hours on that job, then they're less likely to, kind of go wrong or spend too much time. Another thing actually that's really beneficial for by estimating scheduling the estimated number of hours is that you'll actually be getting, when they record their time, you'll be getting a really good, accurate, okay, this is what we estimated, this is what's actually happened. So by keeping your estimates separate to your quote as well, we know that what we estimated should be accurate. Therefore, if the actuals have come in differently, we can start saying, okay, well, why have they? And this brings me to my next area, which is your job tracking. So this is where we find out why we are over servicing. So we know we've sold enough hours within the agency. We know that our estimate is nice and accurate. And we also know that hopefully the resource aren't going to spend too much time on the job because they've been scheduled the work from their estimate. It's going to be less likely to be human error as well, and also using a different resource because we've picked up those hours from the estimate and given them to the resource. So why, this is where we say, if we are still over servicing, then why? A lot of people think that the job tracking is where we solve the over servicing, but as I've just gone through those areas, I hope that you can see that actually it happens a lot sooner than that. So it's all about the planning as well as the job tracking, of course. But it's about doing something before it gets to this stage. Again, recording time against all of the jobs and doing that daily as well will, if the planning's gone well and we've scheduled the hours from the estimate, so we're kind of thinking, well, it can't be anything else unless it is human error, then what we need to do is we need to be saying things such as, okay, let's have a look at a jobs list then, again, whatever it is that you're using. So this here could be a list of all of your live jobs. These thermometer bars then are saying how far through that budget based on the time we are. So if we estimated, say, 100 hours, we've recorded 50, this thermometer bar should be showing that we're 50% of the way through those hours. So what we can then do is we can go in and make sure that we are 50% of the way through. So we've done everything we can up to this stage, okay, up to actually doing the work to try and reduce the over servicing. But now it's up to us to make sure that if that does happen, we know why. By time recording daily, it will also allow us to see if we're getting close to 100%. It may be, that we're 78% of the way through the hours, but actually we're only 50% of the way through the work, in which case, why are we? If it's that the client has moved the goalpost, this, by using something like Excel or Synergist, obviously for clients of ours, or, any kind of tool that will allow you to have all of this in one place, will give you that visibility on, okay, we're 78% of the way through, let's go in and make sure that we are actually 70% of the way through the work. If we aren't, if it's clients that have moved the goalposts, let's gain that visibility. So it will just give you a really, really nice breakdown. And it will also, if you have over-serviced or are over-servicing, it will give you the ability to then potentially, depending on the deal that you've got with that client, go back to them and renegotiate before it does go over that 100% line of used hours. If say if you've done your estimate accurately, you've scheduled from the estimate, and the over servicing still occurs, it may be down to things like human error, which again, we can't always help. If it's down to something like client moving the goalpost, like I said, you can then present the evidence. If it is something that keeps happening, if you've got one particular job type and you keep over servicing on that particular job type, perhaps we need to actually go back into that job and revise the estimate. So look at the actuals on that particular job type, which we keep over servicing, and say, well, okay, if it keeps happening, well, let's just change the estimate to reflect the actuals that come in. As long as it isn't, like human error or the individual client moving the goalposts, then it's got to be something to do with those initial stages. Okay. So just jumping then back to this page, just want to go over a quick summary. That's been super, super quick. Like I said, I did try and get as much in as I could, but if you'd like to go through any of those aspects in more detail, please do contact me. My contact details will be up on the page in just a second. This is just a quick summary on what I've covered today. So a bad briefing estimate will have significant hidden cost implications. Communicate at the planning stages, input accurate information into the business. So that's, ensuring that your estimate is nice and accurate, that you've got the number of hours calculated that's available to sell within the business, sell enough of those hours, and then also track time and notes against the job, clients, and the staff. So ensure that we've got it all right at the initial stages, and then so if something does go wrong, we have that visibility because the time is being recorded against the job, so we can look at our estimate versus our actual. So that is everything that I'm going to cover today. If there are any of those reasons that you think, actually, yes, that's something that happens with us, please do email me. And if you have any suggestions for other webinars that you'd like us to do, obviously with working with agencies, I'm sure you come up against some of the same challenges being agencies yourselves. So please do let us know. And like I said, if you want any more information, please do drop me an email afterwards. Also, feedback is always, always, always welcome. I hope you found it useful, and I will hopefully speak to you soon. Thanks ever so much, everyone. Bye.